Hi, I'm Peter Flynn, and I'm a researcher at the Field Museum of Natural History in Chicago, and I study ants. I could also be called an entomologist, which is somebody who studies insects, or a myrmecologist, which is somebody who specifically studies ants. So the Field Museum has an extensive collection of ants, with over 17 million insects in this collection in both pinned boxes, which makes it easy to identify ants, or in ethanol, which is a liquid which allows insects to be preserved for long periods of time so scientists can then identify and study them later. So specifically, I study ants and their microbes, so microbes that live inside of them. Ants have a lot of beneficial as well as harmful bacteria and viruses which live in them, and my job is to figure out what those microbes are, why they live in the ants, and how they're interacting with the ants as well as with each other. So for my research, I've traveled across the world, from South Africa to French Guiana in South America, as well as Scotland in Europe, and across the United States, such as Florida, Arizona, California, Illinois, and Indiana. So what do you need to be an entomologist? Pretty much all you really need is a willingness to stare at the ground for long periods of time, or in trees for a long time. In the Midwest, most ant species make nests underground or in leaf litter, but in warmer regions, many species of ants live entirely in trees, so they're arboreal, and ant researchers have to basically climb a tree to collect the ants that they want. And then the only other thing that you need besides wanting to stare at ants is this thing, which is called a pooter or an aspirator. And how this works is it has a little mesh filter here between the glass tube and the plastic tube. And what you do is you suck on it. If you see an ant that you want to collect, you suck on this, and the ant shoots up into here. It gets stuck between the filter, and then you take this vial filled with ethanol, and you blow the ant back into the vial. So then you have your ant collected. This only really works for ants that are small enough to fit into this tube, but you can also use this forceps if you have an ant that's bigger, because ants vary in size from almost microscopic to really, really big, about the size of maybe my thumb. So yeah, if you had an ant that big, you probably would use a pretty long pair of forceps, especially if it has a sting. Yeah, I think growing up, I used to think there were only red and black ants, and it turns out there are over 14,000 species of ants described worldwide, and most likely over 20,000 if you count estimates of undescribed ant species. And I think my favorite ant, I have a lot of different kinds of ants that I think are my favorite, but one of my number one ants is called a turtle ant, or cephalotes, and this is an ant that's found in the southwestern United States as well as in a lot of the South American regions. And the cool thing about turtle ants are that they have this sort of, you can kind of see in this picture, this disc-shaped head, and they use their disc-shaped head, the workers in this colony use their disc-shaped head because they live in hollowed out pieces of twig like this, and they have to, here's a picture of a bunch of different species, they have to basically use their head as a doorway. So they put their disc head in the holes in the tree, in a hollowed out twig, and then they only let other ants in their colony in. They only open their head when other ants from their colony come into the tree. So it's a pretty cool way that they've evolved to fit where they live. In a way, it's basically like us having doors on our head. And then one of my other favorite ants is called a bullet ant, and they're called bullet ants because they have an extremely painful sting, and it's likened to being shot. So they are not this big. They're one of the biggest ants, about this big. You can see it in here. You don't want to by accident sit on one of these ants. But they're also not found in the Midwest. They're only found further south in regions in South America and Central America. This is a trap jaw ant. They're cool because they have this jaw that basically shuts faster than almost anything in the animal kingdom, and they're able to catch small prey that way. It's so fast you can't even see it with the human eye. Also, there are very small versions of trapjaw ants that live in Chicago and the surrounding area. Another cool ant that is found in Chicago and the surrounding area is called the Odorous House Ant. I'm sure you've seen these in your house because they often are attracted to sugar, or they like little scraps of food left on your counters. They're pretty small and black, and the way you can tell an odorous house ant from other ant species is if you take it, next time you see one, take it, pick it up, crush it, smell it, and it smells kind of like, I think it smells like blue cheese. Some people think kind of like, just like a sticky pineapple. So yeah, so those are some of my favorite ants, and I highlighted a couple that were from Chicago, that live in Chicago, and the cool thing is that before moving to a city, I sort of assumed that they're only, ant species are only found in rural areas or areas with lots of forests, but actually there are over 90 different species of ants that live in Chicago and the surrounding area. So I think even cities can be pretty diverse if you go out and look for them. And there are some easy ways to get involved with thinking about ants. So I think one of the best ways would be the Ant Picnic Project, which is a citizen science project. So it's a project that anyone can get involved with. It's an easy way to actually become involved with a scientific experiment. So researchers wanted to answer the question, what do ants prefer to eat around the world? So all you have to do as a citizen scientist is set out a prescribed ant food baits, collect the baits, and then count the ants that were present at each of the baits that you set out. And then you share this data with a scientist. The data that you collect will then contribute to a larger database with data from students from around the world who are also doing this experiment. So we can learn about regional and global trends in ant food preferences, as well as how this might impact the environment and just global change depending on where these ants are found. Another way to get involved is you can start your own collection. All you need to do is have a few pins to pin an ant, pieces of paper to glue the ant onto, and some labels and a box with foam in it so you can put those pins. It's a really fun way to get outside and get your hands dirty. So yeah, I'd recommend going out there and looking for some ants.